Thank you, Mr. Kotak, for agreeing to be part of this short discussion. This is, as Ruchika said, that this is about current economic growth and challenges. I'm tempted to ask you a very personal question, which is about your school days. I believe there was this incident in school. You were a cricketer, and you were being coached by a famous coach called Ramakant Achrekar. And something happened while playing cricket there. What really happened? I mean,
so this is actually college. But in school, I say my single biggest honor is to have Mr. Ramakant Achrekar as my coach, who later, many years later, actually coached Sachin Tendulkar. So
that's right.
So,
and your social media comment on when Mr. Achrekar passed away.
Yeah.
Was very touching.
Absolutely. And he was a fantastic coach. Besides batting and bowling, he would focus on fielding. And if you dropped a catch while you're practicing, you got a big stump hitting your buttock, okay, and hard. And get your act together. So I think that's the kind of discipline and passion he brought to it, and I think that's extremely important in everything you do in life. And of course, in college, when I was the age of 20, 1979, I got hit by a cricket ball while running between the wickets.
Oh.
And then went into a brain surgery.
Oh, God.
And as my family often jokes, I had a lot of messy stuff up in the head. It all got cleaned up, and I came out a better person.
No, that's a very unkind joke, I must say. Okay. So after that, you never went back to cricket?
No, I did not go back to cricket, and then I completed my MBA thereafter.
Okay.
And then, of course, got into an entrepreneurial journey.
That's right. So, I mean, what are the similarities between cricket and banking, which you took up later?
Yeah, I think there's lots of similarities. Of course, the world of cricket also has undergone significant change. I grew up in the world of 5-day test cricket. Then you used to have Ranji Trophy for 3 days. And then you saw 1 day, which was 50 overs each. And now, of course, you have T20. So different formats of the game have different requirements.
That's right.
But through each format of the game, there are some principles which remain common, which is you need to pace your innings, whether it's 20 overs, 50 overs, 5 days. And in many ways, that's true about life and business. If you go too slow, you never catch up. If you go too fast, you run the risk of getting all out. So irrespective of the game you play, there is a certain fundamental philosophies which apply in life. It's also about discipline, about culture, about teamwork, and so many things which you learn from a sport, including from cricket, and I've benefited enormously out of that.
Okay. And if I may ask, what are the dissimilarities? What are the differences?
The dissimilarities are that if you get bowled out, you can come back and play another game. If you get bowled out in a business, it gets much tougher to come back.
Oh, that's a difficult one. Let's talk a little bit about the prevailing economic situation with which you are very familiar and you are a participant. How would the finance minister outlined it really well. How do you read the domestic economic situation in the context of the global developments? Give us a kind of a short class on your understanding of the state of the Indian economy in the global context.
I think first of all, I'm sure more and more people have joined X.
Okay.
Because every morning you get some fresh piece of news which changes how you think the world is going to operate today.
Yeah.
And then you get something else tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because in the Trump era, we're seeing a very different paradigm than what we have seen for a very, very long time. And this changes the rules of the game. I think the finance minister alluded to the whole area of multilateralism moving away, global institutions having a complete rejig, including the whole bilateral situations where effectively I think we are moving from a world where I do believe the principle in the post-World War II was of enlightened self-interest. To now, we're probably running the risk of working in a world which is very short-term selfishness. And the danger for if each country starts doing that, I mean, how do you make sure that the broader cultural issue and holding the planet Earth together works in conjunction with the interests of each individual vertical, which is a country.
That's right.
And that, I think, is one of the biggest challenges for the global economic order. And for many of us who are in the world of financial markets, we are finding politics beginning to play a much bigger role in how markets and economies are beginning to move. The factor of politics, which was a much lower factor for a very long time in the post-World War II world, has become a significant aspect of how it plays. And finally, this is the famous theory about, in many games, video games, you have this, and it's a very famous line that you're moving into a world where power is power.
That's right.
And in that kind of environment, very often countries don't have a choice, and ability to argue or take a counter position is getting tougher and tougher. And in that context, for the other side of it, I was very, very impressed with the interview, the press interview many of you would have seen about 24 to 36 hours ago with President Trump and Macron. And I thought the French president did a pretty good job in making his point of view clear, even as the US president made his points. So I think we need a world where we should not be afraid to say, we may say it nicely, but we must express our point of view.
Okay. You said something very interesting about the entry of politics into financial world. Can you tell us a little more about this equation? How is it really playing out? And I mean, I'm just reminded of what Jeff Bezos has done to Donald Trump this morning, yesterday. So how does politics play its role? Is it invited, or is it comes and, I mean, how is the mechanics like?
I think, of course, you've got Chris addressing this group after this, but it's pretty simple here. If you just take, let's give the example of Indian economy and markets.
Yeah.
Okay. One fine day you hear that tariffs on imported cars is going to be dropped. What does it do to the domestic auto industry? And it's a decision taken somewhere in the world, or it's a pressure from somewhere in the world, which can put pressure at other parts of the world. And that has direct impact on the auto sector, on financial markets, for the entire chain, because more than, I think 40+% of the economy is linked to the auto sector and the entire engineering and auto ancillaries around that. So it's direct impact of politics getting into economics and affecting markets globally.
But wasn't it always the case of politics entering into?
Not, I think it was much more stable.
Much more stable.
I think even if change happened, it was more evolutionary.
Okay.
I think the kind of change we are now seeing is, to put it mildly, revolutionary.
Okay, okay. That's quite disturbing, actually. Recently you made, since you referred to Chris Wood, my mind has gone to the markets, and you made a fairly revolutionary comment about stock market. And I saw this advertisement on television the other day about a cricketing icon is actually saying that this is not the time to pull your money out. Now, your take on the Indian stock market right now, and you also referred to the fact that how the international, we are by putting your money, actually the FI are pulling out the money. What was your actual whole story?
I think, first of all, I didn't comment on whether markets are high or low. I just said that the valuations in some segments are quite high. That's about it. But I didn't give a broader general comment on the market with reference to large cap, mid cap or anything. But my point is something very, very different. you have a world where there is clearly US exceptionalism, which is a reality. Maybe things have improved in the last few days, but otherwise, if you looked at it, the US in the post-Trump election win, the US dollar was and is acting like a suction pump, a vacuum pump.
Yeah.
So the whole world has got significant dollarization and financialization coming out of enormous amount of expansion of the US fisc and the US balance sheet,
That's right.
sovereign balance sheet, which has created a huge amount of dollars worldwide. Now, as this vacuum pump starts moving the other way, it is bound to create pressure in various countries. And India is also been a very positive recipient of the international flows. So even today, if you look at the FPI flows at market value, it would be about $800 billion. If you look at foreign direct investment stock, which is both listed and unlisted, the value of that stock would be close to $1 trillion at market. Then you have India's external commercial borrowings, which is at about $700 billion. Therefore, if you take the total stock of capital repatriable assets, which India has attracted today, it's about $2.5 trillion. Now, of course, our reserves are very comfortable at around the net 550 to $600 billion. Therefore, I don't think there is any issue about any remote crisis as well. So we are in a very good position from being able to counter it. The key question is that if US interest rates remain around 4.5% long term and dollar becomes the continuing dominant currency in the Trump world, India must have a strong game plan that if a small percentage of 2.5 trillion has an exit, now whether you can debate whether it's 2%, 3%, 5%, 7%, what is our countermeasures from a policy point of view? And we automatically come to a choice that when money does, when FPI or an FDI sale happens, the choice in front of the country is to use the reserves.
That's right.
Or let the market find its level. So those are the policy choices India needs to make. And say, for example, if we use the reserves and money, dollars are supplied and rupees are taken out, how do you ensure domestic liquidity? So those are all the policy challenges which come in because of the external account. In any country, it's always much easier to manage an internal account. But an external account is outside your control. At the same time, one of the very big positives in my career is for the last few years in a long journey, the Indian saver has become an investor, which is a very good sign. The length and breadth of the country is getting flows into investment and risk-based investment. It has enhanced in the post-COVID world. However, this saver-turned-investor is a first-time investor in many cases. And very often, he is investing not fully understanding the valuations at which his every month's SIP is going, for example. Okay. And therefore, without knowing the levels, he continues to put what I call SIP, which is a very good outcome of a saver becoming an investor. But he is independent of valuations. And if the portfolio or FDI is going out, his money is coming in, which is being taken out. That's what I really meant.
Okay.
Having said that, I do believe we will reach a point where Indian valuations will start getting to be very attractive. And I don't know when, therefore, I don't want to comment on levels. But at that point of time, we would probably see a significant opportunity coming back into capital markets as we go forward. And one of the things is, when you move into a world of free markets, you have to be very ready, both as investors, practitioners, and policymakers, that markets can go up and markets can go down. And ideally, do not get involved in trying to manage that or manipulate that in any way. That would be my general point.
Yes. You know, you said a very interesting thing. You know, I mean, you said that this is the first time investor, probably, a saver turn investor. So how do you prevent that investor being scarred? I mean, it appears to me that
I think we have to be very clear. If you are an investor, you are taking risk.
Okay.
Otherwise, you better be a saver and put your money in relatively much
Yeah.
lower risk instruments. If you have higher returns or you have aspiration for higher risk, return goes together. And it may, in the short run, one may look better than the other, but over a medium term, risk and return find a appropriate equilibrium in the context of a market. And that's the, to use your Manthan phase, that's the Manthan
That's happening.
which the marketplace is going through. I would not worry too much about it. I would focus as a country on our fundamentals. I think there's a lot of things on fundamentals India has done and will need to do further. I mean, honestly, and I'm saying this quite openly, in this world with significant breakdown in trust between countries, every country will have to spend a lot more on its defense.
Okay.
And I would actually encourage India, for our point of view, an Indian business to build defense in India.
That's right.
Okay, because moment you are not building that capability, you are dependent on some other country with whom you may have good relations today, may not be so great tomorrow. Therefore, how fast we can build our Atmanirbharta in our security, in my view, should be a very important priority for our country.
Absolutely. I think we have a session on defense, Mr. Kotak, on this in the evening, and we'll definitely explore this subject as well there. Going to the macro a bit, you talked about defense as one area. If you were to list maybe two major challenges that you see for India going forward in this world of global uncertainties, what those two or three big challenges you would see?
See, I come from the world of commerce and economics. Therefore, I'm always very cautious about negative operating profit and loss accounts for a long time.
Okay.
And for me, a current account deficit is a negative profit and loss account.
Okay.
Okay? And we are now at a time where our current account deficit is modest. Therefore, we have made a significant improvement in our situation. Partly linked to the fact that oil is also very much within the control of between $70 and $75, which is a good thing. Now, if you take India's current account deficit today, which is the operating P&L on the external account before capital, we are at about $50 billion, give or take, 1.2, 1.3% of GDP as our current account deficit. But you look at the breakup within that. We are trade surplus in that net number with the United States, which is $40 billion. And you are trade minus with China in excess of $80 billion. Now, what are we going to do about the mix of our current account, especially if the United States wants to equalize? How are we going to think about it? Some of it will be substitution, but some of it may have a net impact. So we need to think, what are we going to do? How are we going to get competitive? And answer to a current account deficit ultimately is domestic competitiveness. And I think there we really need to focus on two things. One is productivity. I have used this phrase elsewhere also. I call it as ROTI. Okay. India can dramatically improve its ROTI, that is return on time invested. Okay. And which is something which we significantly need to focus on. Anything, whether it's private sector, anywhere, we just take longer than we should. And if we can get the discipline of doing things on time and productively, I think that will be, we just need to improve our ROTI. Okay?
Okay.
And be very careful that there is too much of butter naans and kulchas, heavy kulchas, which need to move to very thin rotis with high return on time invested. So that is one, productivity and efficiency.
Excellent.
And secondly, I fundamentally believe competitiveness. And Indian industry has, and maybe I think it's important for us to bring it, Indian industry has had a long innings of protectionism.
Yeah.
Now, in the post-US world, many countries are going to have huge surpluses and maybe need to sell in distress. What are we going to do? Are we going to say that if something is available instead of $100, it's available at $60? Am I going to say that I will not, and assuming it's an intermediate, I'm not going to buy it for my auto industry at 60 instead of 100, but protect the domestic industry by buying it for auto to buy it from domestic industry at 100? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So what is the priority?
Yeah.
And how are we going to use the advantage of global discontinuity? And for many of us as bankers, we have lived through businesses where you have distress assets. So there's going to be distress produced around the world. How are we going to take advantage of that? At the same time, you don't want to destroy your industry long term. So how are you going to manage both? And that is a part of a policy opportunity and a challenge.
Okay, okay. So we are getting to here in many new terms. The finance minister talked about the butter. You're talking about roti.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Let's move on to the banking sector, which is your forte. Can you give us a sense of your assessment of the state of Indian banking today? Because you are seen as India's preeminent banker. How do you look at Indian banking today?
I think, first of all, I've seen the whole cycle of banking.
Yeah.
Starts from the Asian crisis in the 90s, which was 1997,
Yes, 97.
to the global financial crisis in 2008, to the COVID era. And I've seen the evolution of Indian banking and finance. So I would say India has come a long way. Okay. We have made a significant amount of progress on this. And from the point of view of banking capital and financial stability, we are in a very good place. The question is, what is the role of banking in the broader spectrum of financial services? And in a world where you are now having a significantly higher interplay of the saver and the investor,
Yeah.
you have to look at banking from a new lens, that you're in the business, your customer is both a saver and partly an investor or partly a saver. How are you meeting the needs of this customer in a more holistic manner than in the past? If you keep on flagging the horse, no, give me your deposits when he wants to put some money or into equities, it's not going to work beyond a point. You've got to be able to give a more holistic approach to banking and financial services for the future. And like in many other areas, there is an element of verticalization, including in the broader regulatory front as well in the financial services sector, which I think the finance minister also alluded to. So how do you bring a mindset which is solution for the customer as the core of the future of banking, and not just wanting it to be unidimensional alone?
Yeah.
And with the strong stability which is there, there may be pockets of a little bit of stress coming in, say, in microfinance or a little bit of unsecured retail, which is, most of it is a part of a cycle. Some of it could be structural, which is a separate discussion. Balance sheets of banks should be strong enough to be able to absorb some of these bumps which come along the road. And that's how we should be looking at it. So we have made a lot of progress. I think our regulatory framework has also evolved significantly. But along with evolution, I think we also have to constantly challenge ourselves. Whether it's the practitioner or the policymaker, the challenge has to be, are we doing too little? Are we doing too much? Are we too lax? Are we too tight? And constantly question yourself on this for making a sustainable financial services franchise. And finally, financial sector is a very big catalyst for India's overall economy. And it has to pull its weight. I do believe that the banking sector should be pulling a lot more weight if India aspires to be a top 3 economy in the world in the next few years.
Okay. But you touched upon both people, you talked about technology, and you also talked about regulation. Let me first come to technology. You had famously said a few years ago that the era of the old traditional banks is over because of the new banks, technology banks coming in and everything Now, how do you see, where do we see banking from a technology lens right now? Where do we stand?
Yeah, I'll give the example of the world of horses and cars.
Okay.
Okay. Sometime around 1890, you saw the early advent of the cars,
Yeah.
and horses were preeminent. And horses are dead as method of transportation today. Cars started really growing post early 1900s. But 1918 World War I was primarily fought on horses.
Yeah.
Even in World War II, where cars were fully prevalent, all the load and luggage and everything was still on horses. Therefore, if you ask somebody in 1890 that the future is not horses, he will say you're crazy. I remember a story about New York City. There was a research analyst who did a report on New York City horse manure in 1890, which said that in the next 20 years, because of the huge growth in horses, by 1910, horse manure will cross first floor of New York buildings. And that was a prediction this analyst made. But the world changed.
Yeah.
Therefore, the change is there, and you are moving away into the digital world. I think the change is going to be faster than what you saw between cars and horses, undoubtedly, and it is happening. And I think as a part of that, you're also seeing this saver-investor move. When the money is moving from saver to investor, the amount of balances savers will keep in their savings accounts is going to be much smaller. Therefore, a branch-led model, which assumed a savings account balance of per customer of, say, 50,000 rupees, finds that coming down to 10,000 rupees, branch costs remaining the same, your economics are changing.
That's right.
And there is inevitability of that change which banking and financial services will have to make. And the fact of the matter is, many of you use Google Pay and Phone Pay. They have no branches.
Absolutely.
Okay?
So physical banking is dead.
No. Physical banking is going to get much slower in terms of its share. Because physical banking will be much for brand, convenience, customers, psychological comfort, because there is a world of customers which gets trust from a bank, and a bank still has some association with a branch. Therefore, you need it from that point of view.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because there's a trust element and a brand element. And when things don't work well, you want some sort of a physical presence. But the density requirement of branches is significantly coming down.
That's right. Let's turn to regulation. How do you see banking regulation has evolved over the last many years? There was a time when there were no private sector banks, so regulation had to follow a certain norm, certain pattern. So now with that, from the late 1990s, you also saw many private banks. I'm not talking about pre-69, but post-reforms. So how do you think regulation has really sort of progressed, and what do you see are the gaps?
I very much share what the finance minister said, that financial regulation across practitioners and policymakers needs to be looked at much more holistically. I think this was an idea which started in 2012 when there was a financial sector report which came out, and you saw the formation of FSDC, Financial Sector Development Council, under the finance minister, with all the other regulators participating. I think the strengthening of this process to look at the financial sector holistically would be a big plus in our journey in the financial intermediation space. And frankly, I have to also give credit to the regulators for actually navigating India. In the post-global financial crisis, we saw a lot of problems in India. If you look at 2018, Indian financial sector was looking very much weak, including the famous IL&FS explosion, which happened in September 2018. We've come a long way from that. And I think we owe it to give the regulators credit for having steered the financial sector's stability. And it's always a very difficult balance between growth and stability. Um, and that's the, and how do you also see the evolving customer changes? And technology is changing how we behave. So you have technology, you have the move, which is a very major move. You have a move from saver to investor, which you need to nurture. And you need to see the growth in both banking and market instruments to be able to fund the growth of India's economic objectives. And in that, I think we're going to see a combination of things. And then you have the external financial flows, foreign savings coming into India through foreign portfolio investment, foreign direct investment, external commercial borrowings. So it is a very, very interesting pot. And it requires a very nuanced approach to financial sophistication across practitioners and policymakers.
That's right. You know, you talked about FSDC. The finance minister also talked about regulatory overreach. And then there is also this debate about should the central bank be focused mainly on monetary policy, and there should be a separate body which should regulate banks. There's an old debate going on. Many countries have moved in that direction, have moved back. What is your perspective on this entire?
I think this needs to be debated at FSDC.
FSDC.
Yeah, so let the FSDC take a view on all these things. I think a narrow view by an ex-practitioner like me may not be appropriate.
Okay, I understand. The finance minister also talked about India Inc. not investing. Would you have any suggestions on what needs to be done, purely as an outsider to the government system, to be done to revive the investment rate right now from the private sector? If any policy fixes are required, please.
I would really believe that the Prime Minister's two statements, if both business and policy keep on following, we will get there. One is ease of doing business, and second is minimum government, maximum governance. If we just follow these two statements, both business and policy makers, which is the vision of our Prime Minister, I think we will get there.
Okay. Before we turn to the audience for a few questions, if you were asked to list 3 steps that you need the government to take for addressing the economic challenges lying ahead, what would those 3
but
steps
Ashok,
be?
what are the challenges? I heard you in the last session, you said economy is normalizing. It's not in a challenging situation.
No, but still, you have the global economic situation staring at you, tariffs, reciprocity in tariffs. You have a manufacturing sector problem. Your growth is not really showing up at all. So there are many challenges in that sense. So what would be your...
I think the first, I would love to see Indian enterprise have its animal spirits back.
Okay. That's it.
I think that is point number 1. And obviously, it's much easier for me to say that, oh, get animal spirits back. The question is how, which is a longer debate. But I would really focus on getting Indian business, both corporate sector, entrepreneurs and others, to really get revved up that India is the place for us to put money. Second, what does it take? I think we have seen some, to use your phrase again, some normalization in foreign direct investment.
That's right. See, even the normalization phase was not taken very kindly.
And if you look at April to December, actual net FDI is now down to about 1.2 billion versus last year, same period, it was 10 billion.
That's right.
So there is a significant slowdown, if I can venture to say, in net FDI flows. Part of it is valuation. Part of it is the challenges many strategics face in their home markets. So a combination of these factors has led to a significant slowdown in FDI. And I would really find ways of getting world-class FDI come into and make use of this opportunity. Therefore, in addition to trade dialogue with countries, I would really look at a very serious investment dialogue. And what does it take for us? We made some progress with Apple, but again, I read in the media, Apple is committing $500 billion of domestic manufacturing in the United States.
That's right.
So this home country bias, especially from US, is another significant challenge to the world.
That's right, yeah.
And frankly, I think the second point I would really want to focus on is making sure that our current account is not out of control. You cannot afford vulnerability in a crazy time. So that would be my second important thing. And third is something which I have been feeling more so in recent times, and I've talked about it also. Many Indian families have sold their businesses.
Yeah.
And therefore, families are sitting on capital. But most of them now find it more attractive, the next gen, people in their 30s, to go and invest and play in the stock market. What does it take to charge them to say, listen, you have the capital. Of course, you can support other ventures, no question about it, with capital surplus. But what does it take? Does it take for you to really go out and buy, build, or start businesses? What is it that makes it difficult for you to do that? And in that context, I'm just bringing another point. We need to create global consumer brands. I would love to see a few famous brands from India, consumer brands. I mean, if you look at the US, you've got Apple, you've got Facebook, you've got Coke, you've got Pepsi. If you look at Europe, you've got German cars, the Mercs and the Audis. You've got Italian fashion, you've got French brands, Chanel, Louis Vuitton. You've got Japanese brands, you've got Korean brands, which is LG. Global, and it will be recognized anywhere in the world. You've got Chinese brands, which is Lenovo, which is BYD, TikTok. I would love to see a few global Indian brands which everybody in the world will recognize, from Bolivia to China.
Is the ease of doing business here is one factor?
I think it's India's aspiration. We must be there with quality, with a desire to create world-class brands. And that is a proof of excellence.
That's right.
India has a very big advantage of a domestic population. That should not make us complacent to be truly outstanding in excellence and quality. And that is the challenge for Indian business sector.
That's right.
Can we create in the next 5 years a global consumer brand? Consumer, I'm not talking about corporate.
I understand.
Which is created from India and which is truly global.
Okay, we have just about 5 minutes, so maybe 2 or 3 questions. Please identify yourself and...
Hello. Hi, sir. I'm
Yeah.
C.A. Jatin
Yeah.
Kochar. Glad to meet you.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question about lending. I'll talk about personal loans. So we talk about digital era and everything, but right now, in terms of lending, we are doing it manual, right? So we get the papers and everything. So my question is that lots of frauds of identity theft and fraud loans are getting reported on monthly basis, or if I talk about RBI, RTI, it reports that 4.92 trillion frauds happened in 2021 in personal loans only. So how we can make it digital? Because if somebody wants to get in touch with the senior personnel of any bank, and see, it is very difficult to reach them to give a suggestion or to particularly work with them in digital field. And if somebody approaches there or reach there, it is very difficult.
Yeah, please, just put your question.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It is difficult to reach them, or if anybody reaches them, the point is that they are not ready. They resist to change. So how does that change can be made? How can we approach
I think
them?
let me first tell you,
Yeah.
the digital loans are also growing.
Yeah.
But frauds are growing in digital loans also. Okay, so you have frauds both in the physical world and digital world. There is identity theft, there is theft of the phone number, there is the theft of the SIM card, and the level of frauds in digital at some level is at least equal, if not higher, than in the physical world.
Right.
So this whole area of mule and fraud is a very big issue today.
Okay.
And I think the answer for that is one, obviously, the underwriting standards, the security standards which banks and financial institutions need to have to be able to identify mules and frauds at the point of giving the loan is a key point. And again, their banks will have to use disproportionate technology. The second really is, I think you need a strong cyber enforcement system where there are gangs and networks in many parts of the country which have a business model around making money from frauds. I think we really have to go after these gangs.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
go with a passion and a vigor. And there are, in some specific parts, well known, maybe harsher action in that is, I think, the answer.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I just have a second question relating to
No,
this.
I think let some others ask their questions. You can talk to him later, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this thought-provoking session. So my name is Arumita Mitra, and I'm from Calcutta myself, and I'm a social entrepreneur. So my question is that with the rise in GDP, the purchasing power of the middle class is also increasing. And you will see the amount of account opening in private sector. Like I come from a family that never encouraged me to open an account in a private account. So our family generation came with only government banking. But I'm that first generation who thought that no, the private sector is more giving than the government sector is well. However, when we talk about the society, we talk about the section of the society that is also underprivileged and has not climbed up the ladder. So when as a bank, like as Kotak as a giant in private sector right now, are you also considering any tailored banking solution that gives an opportunity to get this unorganized sector or the laborers or anyone that is trying to climb up from the lower middle class to middle class as a banking solution?
No,
Yeah, please.
I think the answer is pretty simple. Banks across the board, including banks like us, lend across the segment, including to the lower end of society. There's also a requirement for banks by the Reserve Bank that 40% of all loans banks make have to be to the priority sector. And I think most banks meet that in general. There may be some sub-classification banks may not be, but in general, banks do provide to the private priority sector as well. However, the dharma or the dharma of any business, including banking business, is that if you lend money, it is reasonable to expect you will get it back. So as long as that dharma is met, I think banks will be very open to lend money because that's the core of their business.
Thank you. I think we have come to, sorry? Okay, be brief.
Shall I ask if he's not getting the mic?
Go
Very
ahead.
small. Yeah. So my name is Pradeep. I come from a very small town. What I've noticed, people are scared to use the technology, especially for the banking sector. Even though my dad is scared to use the phone for anything. So we have seen 11,000 crore lost last year in beginning of 9 months in 2024 for the banking sector due to fraud and everything. What kind of awareness we are giving? In cities we are aware about, but in the small towns, what kind of awareness we are circulating to the people, ensuring they are using more technology, becoming more trustworthy, and banks are becoming more trustworthy with the people.
Okay, we have got you.
Yeah, I think the question we already
Yeah,
addressed,
we have
and I
addressed,
think my view is that both society, the government system, the police system, the investigation system, and the banking system need to really go after frauds with a certain passion and surgicality. I think we need to do more in terms of getting that to order.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kotak. We have
sir,
come
one
to the
question.
end of... No, I think
One
we will...
small question, sir. One small question.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Deepak Malpani. I am a practicing cost accountant. Sir, my question is, since you have discussed about dollarization of major economies in Trump era, So what is your take when we talk in specific comment about BRICS currency or any other currency? Is there any value in it or?
I think right now BRICS has hit a brick wall, so let's leave it there.
Excellent. I think that's the very brief and the right comment. So we have come to the end of this wonderful session, Mr. Kotak. Thank you very much for taking your time out.
Thank you very much.
It was such a wonderful thing. We enjoyed it. The crowd enjoyed it. And being so frank and forthright. Thank you very much, Mr. Kotak. Thank you.